There is one very important part of movies that we cannot leave out. I think a lot of movies do this very successfully, but a lot of movies don't. Sometimes you just have to take a deeper look by taking a step back. Hi guys, I'm back. Thank you guys so much for waiting for me. My last upload did not actually happen because of just scheduling, and I'm just in a really very interesting situation right now that's completely new to me. That's why I changed my upload schedule in the first place. Let's get started on today's video, which is really simple if you think about it. I'm talking about the marriage between movies and sound. And sound is really big. It involves music, sound effects, dialogue, and like hearing things, like anything that has to do with your sense of hearing. With movies, you usually think of very striking images or emotional performances put on by the actors, or even CGI, advanced CGI, or even CGI that was very advanced for the time. But a lot of what movie making is also a lot of sound. Depth in the music, emotional performances are only done through both the visual performance and also the weight of the emotional voice that actors use. Both of these two things married together make a movie, and what makes a good movie is things that encompass both of these two categories of senses. The five senses are how we gather, collect, and analyze information and perceive the world around us. If we had none of them, we wouldn't be experiencing anything. And that's why people who are blind or deaf or have sensory issues or can't smell anything, they're missing out on a fundamental part of our world. They're called disabilities for a reason, and I'm not saying that these are bad things. These people were born the way that they were, the way that it was intended for them to be, and they experience life just as anyone else does. But without one of those senses, without sight, you don't see the beauty of moving images or nature, but you can hear beautiful music. And like, there's things that happen that you can always compensate for, but having all five of your senses is really an amazing experience to have. The two major senses I want to talk about are seeing and hearing. I could go into a lot of different scientific reasons and anything, but this is actually not very factual per se. Like, I haven't done extensive research on this. This is not scientific fact. Most of what I'm gonna say is something that I've just observed and my opinion of things. Let's talk first about sight. There's so much depth that we can go into with this, and it's so rich. The visuals, you can go from director to director, or from time period, or from genres of movies on how they use visuals to effectively tell a story. But I'm not going to talk about that because that's a really long conversation for another video. One of the major things is that we can relate to characters through their visual performances. If it's a book and you're reading about somebody crying, it doesn't have the same emotional impact as you seeing them on screen and seeing the turmoil and the conflict on their face and seeing them slowly or quickly break down into tears. It's something that not everybody, but anybody can relate to, or at least sympathize with. The same thing, it doesn't have to just be emotional, it can be like taking a punch. Harrison Ford is very good at taking a punch because he knows how to get hit. He knows what it feels like, and so he knows how to recreate that feeling and that emotion on camera. That's why in the Indiana Jones movies, the fight scenes look super realistic, but it's not, because you know it's not, but you know, Harrison Ford is just very good at taking a hit. Vision is also important because of the rule of showing and not telling. As creators, in especially the movie industry, basically it's drilled into your head that you are supposed to show and not tell. Show the emotion, show what the character is going through, show the conflict, show what kind of obstacles you're facing as the character. Don't tell the audience with a monologue or dialogue or with narration. Not saying those aren't good ways of doing things, because there are ways of doing those things that really do well, but I'm just saying, like, showing and not telling is so much more powerful. You don't have to tell the audience that a character is going through a rough time. You can show them, and you have all of the context to go through with it if it's, you know, the third act of the movie, or even if it's not, and you just see, like, the first opening scene of Rear Window. Rear Window is a great movie, and the first opening scene of Rear Window shows the apartment that the main character is living in. It shows what his life was like before the current events, what happened to him and then now where he is right at this point. It shows an entire story that you could have told through narration, but they didn't, because they just showed the entire apartment and they showed pictures and newspaper articles and then the cast that the character has on. Most of how we interact with the world is through vision. You usually see something before you make an assumption about it, or you smell it or whatever. Yes, the other senses are very powerful on their own as well, but the whole concept of seeing is believing. If I told you I saw a purple elephant, you wouldn't believe me until you saw it. And then next we have sound. Sound is super important. I might have mentioned this in a previous video, but film is mostly sound. Bad visuals are excusable. You can reason away any bad visual, but bad audio, you're in trouble. If there's wind coming through the mic and there's no wind on camera, you're gonna be like, this is really bad audio. Or if there's cracking or clipping, those things can ruin a movie and take you out of the world. Even bad music taste, like music that doesn't fit a scene, or it fits a scene but it's just a really stereotypical way, it just doesn't work, and your brain just automatically just takes you out of the scene and says, yeah, this isn't very realistic, so I'm not going to really follow this. So sound, what it has to do with movies is you usually think about music. You think about scores and compositions and the soundtrack that goes along with movies, but music is extremely moving. A lot of emotional response comes from hearing that soft violin playing or whatever it is that's playing in the background of this very moving and touching scene. Music is like the key that unlocks a specific type of emotional response in our own brains. Again, this isn't scientific, so I'm just saying this from experience, from other people's experience, from the people that I've watched on the internet, and just how composers talk to me about how they write music for film. Music is the key that unlocks the fundamental emotional response, but there's also the right sound effects. We're talking about sound like everything, and I can't go into all of the specifics, but sound effects make or break a movie. Think about any movie that you've ever seen. Usually the sound effects go by unnoticed. I was watching a television series that was made in the 2000s, and this is when movies got all the budget and television was like, you get this much budget and this much time, so do that. So the quality wasn't good, but the story was there. And then they started realizing that people were watching TV for TV, and so they started giving them a little bit more budget and higher quality and so on and so forth. So I was watching this television series that was made in the 2000s, and there was this gun that was involved. It was a, regular standard issue pistol, but the sound effect for it was for a shotgun. And I studied movies and subsequently television shows, and I talk about them on this channel all the time. And so I'm pretty sure I'm probably the only one out of the people who are watching it that noticed, but I was like, that is not something that comes from out a small little gun barrel. It comes from a huge shotgun. That's the sound that a shotgun makes, because science. But the right sound effects really draw you into the world and make you believe that it's real. And that's why people flinch at sound effects or at cracking bones or everything that has to do with sound effects. Coupled with the visuals is great, and we'll talk about how that marriage works later. Sound can also be a major character in any movie, and if it's done right, it can be a very important major character. If sound does not add to an actor's performance, then the actor's performance will most likely fall a little bit flat. I'm not saying that their performance isn't standalone, but the music or the sound effects or whatever score is coupled with that, it just makes it 10 times better and elevates that performance to a higher level. When these two things, visuals and sound, are married together, the audience gets an artistic payout. So let's take a look at some examples. These examples are not perfect movies. I'm not saying that at all. Maybe one of them is perfect. One. But they're good references, and I think they're going to be beneficial to this video. And forgive me if I didn't mention one of your favorite movie scores of all time, but these are just things that I've recently thought about, and again, not extensive research, just me and my brain. This scene has excellent camera movement and keeps you engaged throughout the whole time visually. Plus, each character has its own set of unique sound effects that trigger you to realize which character is taking the center focus of the camera. You feel the rise of victory with the score, but then also these amazing hero shots and different camera movements go along and just kind of give you the all-encompassing feeling and emotion and experience that the director wanted you to feel. Visually, this movie brings out a different side of the audience. I can't begin to talk about the cinematography from this movie. There's so much iconic scenes and visuals from this movie. But it should speak for itself that there's nothing scarier than hearing the Imperial March, seeing Darth Vader come down the aisle, and hearing the breathing sound effects. I remember rewatching this movie and being on the edge of my seat during this entire scene because everything was going wrong. Even things that I didn't think were gonna go wrong went wrong. You know that he's gonna make it out of it. But you don't know because everything is going wrong. So you hear the crack of the tree branch before you see it, but when you do see it, that's all you can see and that's all your attention is focused on. This is the marriage, the beautiful marriage that happens between sound and visuals. Sometimes you hear something before you see it, or sometimes you see something and then coupled with a score makes you even more terrified or victorious or whatever emotion that the director wants you to feel. I hope this video helped you understand a little bit more of what goes into movie making and how you're able to just experience it on a higher level. And you don't have to be aware of all these things that I just said all the time. I'm just aware because I studied it and I watched a lot of movies and this is what I like to do. It's just a new facet of information that you can just appreciate the art of movie making even more. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great random Thursday and I will see you on the other side of the screen.